Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Sights on Sinnoh, the podcast covering all of Diamond and Pearl as we head towards Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the remakes of the Sinnoh region coming out this year on the Nintendo Switch. And today I'm joined by a returning guest to this podcast, JM, also known as Turtle Guy. How are you doing?
Doing well, Will. Thanks again for having me.
Of course, this arc, I guess, as we were discussing briefly beforehand. Yeah, it's a weird but categorical arc, maybe, but this is really low on Turtwig appearances, so I'm wondering if you were able to survive all that.
Yeah, it was fine. I do like how it covered some of the other Pokemon in the party that we don't see too much of before this. I think Turtwig and Piplup have had a lot of spotlight, and Pikachu's always there. So I'm excited to see a little bit more of these characters, and I'm excited for a Brock episode, which is something we haven't really had yet.
That's something that Greg has been saying as well, that Brock is just kind of there in a lot of the episodes, but these two, I think in particular, are starting to showcase him a bit more. So, also excited to see that. And for our new listeners, we're jumping into episode 13 of Diamond and Pearl and episode 14. Episode 13 is titled A Starvia is Born, and the blurb for that reads, Ash is traveling through the forest on his way to Oreburgh City, where he hopes to earn his first gym badge in Sinnoh. But first, he's helping Starly practice aerial ace, a process that doesn't go entirely smoothly. Our heroes also catch the attention of Rosebay. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
A woman who monitors the Pokemon that live in the forest. Lots of Pokemon have been disappearing lately, and she's not sure why. But it doesn't take long for Ash and his friends to decide that they should help her out. So, right off the bat, I remember this vividly when I watched this episode for the first time, which was Starly learning aerial ace is very similar to how Ash taught his Swellow aerial ace back in the Hoenn region.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting you to start off with this because we did watch that episode together a while ago before we even started thinking about this podcast. We saw that episode when we were just skipping through Hoenn, just looking at different things, and that's part of the Lily Cove arc. It's like 3 episodes where they're in Lily Cove, and Ash isn't really the focus there, but this is sort of like the B story of all that, is he's teaching his Swellow aerial ace in the exact same way he's now teaching his Starly aerial ace.
It's really cool because, again, it wasn't even like a main focus for those episodes, but it's something that seems to either have been looked at as a reference for this, or maybe in the most cynical way, it's just that they're like, oh, let's try to put a target on a tree and kind of make that the excuse for like what we're trying to do here in terms of teaching this Pokemon this new move. But me trying to be more optimistic about this, I really feel like that was something that they wanted to refer to. And the specific action of it being Starly or Swellow, whichever bird Ash is teaching, going in for a low dive and then pulling up at the last second.
Right. I mean, it's just a good strategic move, but I also just feel like this is something that they did on purpose. So far, it's felt a lot like this is... I mean, it is a direct sequel to Advanced and that whole Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald series, but like things like the Pokedex music, different themes that come, like musical themes that come up, just different like direction choices that they've made have really made it seem like this is a direct sequel to that series, like more so than say like Johto was to Kanto, or even like Kalos and Unova are pretty closely linked as sequels as well. This just feels very, very directly, and it's more of a callback than anything. At least that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, and because of something that happens near the end of the episode, it does feel like we're getting a bit more development from things that were started in Hoenn, or at least in Battle Frontier, but weren't really resolved or got much growth then. So definitely have that vibe here. And there's also multiple bird Pokemon in this from the past 3 regions, including Hoot Hoot, the whole Pidgey line, Spearow, Fearow, Natu, Talo, pretty much everything. Like all the
All
birds
the
that people
birds.
know. Yeah. Very avian heavy episode. And this starts again with Starly trying to practice aerial ace, but then getting injured, and Ash, of course, still struggling to do this, Brock basically steps in and helps out with Starly's injury, giving it like a bandage. And then this lady just pops out of the bush with
Right,
a
just
like a South African accent, maybe?
yeah, either South African or Australian. She looks like she's wearing like a Steve Irwin costume. One thing I did notice, which is a nice detail they started including, and I think they keep showing characters with this, is she's wearing a Poketch,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
which is like I don't think we saw any before the Poketch episode, which was a couple before this.
Right.
I don't remember because I wasn't actively looking for it, but I saw her running with it a little later in the episode. I'm like, oh, that's a neat little detail they added in there.
Yeah, it's one of those features that's like introduced right before the contest arc in Jubilife. And now this is the first set of episodes that happens after that. So it's cool that immediately they're like, oh, we didn't forget. We were going to make poke catches a thing now going forward, apparently. But
Mhm.
I wish she used it.
Yeah, it's more of an accessory, and I think that
Hmm.
kind of goes for the rest of the series. It's kind of just there. It's like, hey,
It's just like,
remember we have this.
right, like this exists. We're in Sinnoh, but that's kind of all it serves, unfortunately. But she does let our heroes know after Kroga poison jabs Brock away that she's observing Pokemon in the forest, and there's some Pokemon that have like disappeared. But she shows them a few nests that are empty, and then on higher ground tells them about how there's supposed to be more Pokemon out here, but they're just not. Specifically, bird Pokemon. And the group's like, all right, we're going to help you figure this out because, of course, they are.
Of
So
course.
it cuts to a canyon slash pass, basically, like a small canyon where
Mhm.
the bird Pokemon are just as a flock flying through and run into this big net thing, like a net door, but it opens vertically. So when they crash into it, it pushes them down into a chute, basically, and it's huge. It's like 5 stories tall at least.
Yeah, this thing is massive. It's like a fly swatter on a hinge. Is the best
Yes,
way I can describe it.
exactly. Yeah, I was about to say that's pretty spot on. Um, and as Ash sends out Starly to kind of look for the Pokemon, I guess. But they don't really like, I don't know, put a tracker on him or something in case he disappears. Uh, Starly actually gets caught in this as well, and it's revealed that this is a whole elaborate setup by Team Rocket to capture a bunch of birds as their next nefarious scheme.
Oh yeah, and another one of these boss flashbacks to justify it.
Hmm.
Which are I
Yeah.
don't know. Of all the running gags, I do think this is my favorite. Like Brock,
Hmm.
Brock hitting on girls kind of annoys me, kind of creepy, in my opinion. But this flashback, or like the boss flashbacks, are I don't know. I think they're my favorites just because they're so creative, and it's just like, why would Giovanni possibly need these Pokemon? Like, why is this appealing to him?
Yeah, like it makes sense if it's a specific Pokemon, where I feel like that's where Meowth's imagination shines the most. But here is kind of
Right.
just like these bird Pokemon are gonna carry his chair and him in it, so it's like a upper chair or something. I don't know, but
And it's like the balloons and up.
yeah, It is refreshing though that it's not Pikachu related, or it's not like focused around our heroes. It's just Team Rocket doing something on the side that didn't necessarily need to involve our main characters, because it shouldn't completely revolve around them, which I'm totally fine with.
Yeah, and I think that's actually why I like it so much. I didn't even think of that, is that it doesn't make the gang the center of attention.
Right.
Which gets old so fast.
So we cut to our heroes who find the trap, basically, and are able to get a Pidgeot loose from it. So...
Oh, that's after.
That's after? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
going back.
There's a lot of quick cuts here, and it gets a little confusing. Because there's the flashback, and then Starly finds the other birds and gets caught. And then it shows Starly in the cage with all the birds and starts chatting with them. And then there's a quick cut to Ash where he's like starting to get worried that Starly hasn't returned. And Brock says like, oh, the injury was minor. Because Ash is still worried about Starly being injured and bandaged. Brock's like, the injury's fine. Don't worry about it. But Ash is still concerned. And then there's a quick, like 20-second maybe cut of Starly just talking to the birds. And that's like it.
Yeah, it's just him like trying to figure out what's going on, and also, I guess, gather a posse together of to form a plan.
Mm-hmm. And then there's like the cut to Team Rocket.
Yeah, there's like a dramatic fade to black with Hoo and Starly, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
But Team Rocket is really just chilling on top of their trap, basically. At one point, they're just kind of drinking some lemonade and stuff, and then they start sunbathing. So Meowth, being the grunt of the group, basically gets sent down to check on the birds, which are down below.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, that's where the
Pidgeot.
Yeah, they discover that and send Pikachu with Pidgeot to go devise a plan, which I thought was kind of cool, but very random that this Pidgeot trusts them so fast.
Yeah, of all things, it's like you meet the Pidgeot. Like, sure, you save it, but you meet the Pidgeot, and maybe 5 seconds later, you're sending your ace Pokemon on the Pidgeot to gather an army.
It's just so intense. Well, yeah, we'll get to that, but that's pretty much what happens. And again, another cut to down below where Meowth just decides to pick on the Swablu that they captured and puts like a ring around it that immobilizes it.
Yeah,
he then holds it like a big chicken nugget.
This was really confusing and vague. Right before this was when Team Rocket was talking about how they should probably start getting the Pokemon to Giovanni.
Mm-hmm.
And Meowth goes down to do it because he loses a game of rock, paper, scissors.
Right, which is
very arbitrary.
Yes, given that he doesn't have enough fingers or can even like really move his fingers enough.
Right. So it's kind of rigged against him, but then he shows up to the cages with, like you said, that ring, and I'm not really sure like where that came from or what that's like, why that's the method they chose.
I've definitely seen that before, at least in Hoenn, where they just use these rings that they throw at people or even Pokemon to immobilize them.
Oh.
So I guess that's it, but it's really only used here in this episode, so I'm not sure why. Like they just have these lying around, but only use it in this case now.
Yeah, a lot of this just feels like they needed to move characters around and just kind of came up with a way to do it.
Right. It's like kind of ambitious given how much is going on. Still not executed very smoothly enough for us to follow it cohesively. It's also harder to explain, I guess, than most other episodes.
Yeah, this probably sounds really frantic and like we're just jumping everywhere, but that's literally how the episode is written.
Yeah, the flow is just all over the place. While this is happening, okay, setting the scene again. Meowth is downstairs, he has a Swablu and is just taunting the birds that are surrounding him in their cages. but he looks over in the direction of Starly and Hoot Hoot, and they both nod to each other so that Hoot Hoot turns and makes eye contact with Meowth and hits him with hypnosis, which I was like, oh, cool, okay. They're smart, they're not just attacking. And with this now hypnotized Meowth, Starly starts directing him to free people from the cages, starting with Swablu, and this is how they do it. They're just like, all right, we've hypnotized the person who has the keys, and now we're gonna start freeing everyone.
Yeah, and they really use the abilities of most of the bird Pokemon to do it. Like all the smaller birds are helping move the rubble. The Fearos start digging. Like they all team up, and it's really cool to see so many different bird Pokemon, like each getting a chance to shine all at once.
Yeah, it's not just like all they could do is fly. Like they each have their different talents. And you can see that with Swablu having the more like cottony wings, they can actually pick up more dirt and take that aside so the Fearow can keep digging upwards. Because keep in mind, they're deep underground, and couldn't they just go out the door?
No, they established that the other rocket Pokemon are standing guard outside that door.
Oh, right.
And
right,
Meowth makes a comment, which is why the birds know that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
It's surprisingly tightly written.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like there's a lot of cool details, but it's hard to keep track of given the complex nature of this compared to other episodes. But yeah, that's why they start digging, because they can't go out the regular way. But luckily they're in like a dirt cell, so the Fearow, which can use like in the future, because these moves haven't been invented yet, can use things like Horn Drill, which is like a ground type move. So here they're kind of just using Drill Peck basically to get through the dirt and start going upwards.
Right.
Then we see that the heroes outside, Ash and crew, including Rosebay, have noticed that Team Rocket, Jesse and James are asleep on the roof, so they decide to sneak inside while they can.
Right, and they go for a more stealthy approach. Like they don't engage Team Rocket. They don't actually ambush them. They just sneak in. They don't really care about stopping Team Rocket or getting rid of them. They just want to get Starly and the other birds.
Right, this is a rescue mission for them, and they're very aware of that, which is cool. And then again, we see that Pikachu's back, and he's not alone.
Oh my gosh. As cool as this is, it's super ridiculous.
It's insane. He is okay. Like if you cut to this is actually I think this is a cool, effective cold open actually for the show, which is this scene right here, showing Pikachu on his Pidgeot, surrounded by hundreds of bird Pokemon that are all coming straight at the net, with Pikachu telling them to charge and basically use like Aerial Ace or Quick Attack to just slice through the big fly swatter net and completely destroy it. And it looks like it's like rays of energy just plowing through it.
I mean, it's effective. It looks cool. It's a really interesting way to start the episode. I'm not sure I think it's as effective. And I think that's mainly because they also include a later scene just stitched to the end of it. And that just makes it super confusing. As a whole, while I was watching all the episodes to catch up, I just didn't like the cold opens because they were just parts from the middle of the episode. And when I got to those parts, I started panicking because I thought I had like broken the episode.
Yes, you're not the first person to say that, given the new cold open style. And yeah, I do wish generally they maybe would give a recap instead, because they don't really add as much, and it would almost be more effective for people to get a little context of what happened last time, which they sometimes give with the narrator, but here the cold open just serves to kind of confuse you more than anything else.
Right. It's a fun hook.
And what's funny is that all of these events are being shown on CCTV downstairs. So Ash can see what Pikachu's doing, and there's a few impossible camera angles that are like in the sky. But it's really
Yeah,
funny how this is all being communicated.
Ash gets like the football stadium view of all this.
Mhm.
Skycam getting to see the birds, and then he gets to see Starly. So he knows Starly's safe, and he knows where Starly is now. And then he sees everything that Starly and the other captured birds are doing. So he's really getting the full picture, just like we are.
Yeah, it's like cutting a lot of what I don't like from the show, where it's people catching up to each other sometimes when they've been separated and giving explanations or giving really bad explanations that are like, what? No, this you need more context for this. And
Right.
this is something that helps remedy that.
I agree, and it just streamlines it because there's just so much going on in this episode.
Mhm. Yeah, because otherwise, the motivation and tactics that Ash does later on just don't make sense if you don't have that information.
Right.
And then going back down to the jail, the bird jail, I guess. Pretty much everyone's out. We get some Natu leaving, and Swablu. Everyone else is gone. So it's all down to Hoot Hoot and Starly, who are still holding like Meowth as their hypnotized servant. But then Hoot Hoot, I think, explains and Meowth translates that when Hoot Hoot leaves, the spell's gonna wear off of the hypnosis. So this is where I felt like they could have used Swablu and had them use Sing to just put Meowth and like everyone else to sleep as they get away, which could have helped them make a cleaner exit. But instead, we leave Starly here with Meowth, and Meowth, of course, wakes up from the hypnosis and calls in the rest of the gang of Team Rocket's Pokemon, including Seviper, Cacnea, and Carnivine, who did not hear any of the digging, apparently, and just thought Meowth was doing something.
Completely oblivious to the situation inside.
They were slacking hard on the job, just gotta say.
I also just one sec, sorry. I also just don't understand why Starly didn't go first.
Yeah,
like, other than setting up what happens next, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Like, I don't know, Starly was thinking he would hold them off, but he had no clue that Ash and the gang were coming. So that would have been the most logical thing to do for sure. Given the scenario, Jesse and James decide to move to Plan B and reveal that their new house base is on top of this enormous wooden box with legs that was also on top of the jail cell that they made for the birds. So now you know that the whole lid thing, the fly swatter net, was more like the top of something much bigger that was the same size all around. They drop down the ladder so Meowth and their Pokemon can climb on in, but they're still surrounded by birds and freaking out about how they catch them all again because now there's like over, I don't know, like 500 birds around them that look absolutely tiny. So this thing is massive.
Yeah, it's huge and it's ridiculous looking, and it's Mark 93 as Meowth says.
Yeah,
which I don't know where they're putting the other 92 house robots.
Yeah, or maybe it's just the model and like they never got the other ones, but this is just like the new version that they were able to order. But as they're distracted by all these birds flying around them, Firo pokes its head out of the ground, which I thought was weird because in my head they had already gotten out from the bottom.
Yeah, but no, they're just now getting out of the tunnel.
Yeah, so they're really far down because they had all this time to evacuate these Pokemon through the hole, but we're still not at the top, apparently.
They also dug themselves out kind of far from the house.
Yeah, maybe that's why it took them a while?
And that will come into play in just a second.
Right, because I guess somehow they knew that, or
It was a
guess,
house robot.
well, not that it was a house robot, but that all the bird Pokemon around them, the ones that were like free, were going to be distracting Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Because this is when Firo pokes its head out to kind of make sure the coast is clear, and the ground explodes with all the bird Pokemon just flying out, and it's amazing. And then Ash and the gang apparently caught up to them really fast and followed them right outside.
I just want to say that most of my notes for this episode just say birds. And this is
Yep.
one of those points where they're just pouring out and just coming out of the ground.
It's incredible. Like, there's just things in this episode that I thought I would never see, and this is one. Pikachu then kamikazes from the Pidgeot and
Straight up
tries to,
airstrike.
basically, it tries to use Thunderbolt on the robot wooden house that kind of looks like a Stagataka, actually, from that
Oh,
angle.
yeah.
But its Thunderbolt is ineffective given that it's all wood. Pidgeot then catches Pikachu as it's coming down, which I was like, oh, apparently they coordinated this. And then Team Rocket tries to step on the heroes, but because their machine's so big and heavy, and they're aiming for where the heroes are standing, which is right next to the hole that they came out of, the foot gets stuck, and the machine just plummets down and completely disassembles. So,
You know, in typical cartoon fashion.
yeah, I thought that was almost more satisfying than them having to figure out how to take it down with several attacks and just have its
Yeah.
own weight cause it to collapse.
And it's just quicker.
And it's just,
They've
yeah,
got
might as
like
well.
5 minutes left at this point.
Yeah, it's already a packed episode. And then it's down to Team Rocket giving the motto. Pretty late, actually.
And again, with 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
They're just wasting their time.
So Ash sends out Starly to fight against Jesse's Dustox. Gets blown back by a whirlwind, which surprises Ash a bit, I guess. And then we have Cacnea follow up with a pin missile at Pikachu. So they're just going all out. Like, I don't even, like, at this point, they're not even trying to capture the birds. But this is when Brock sends out Bonsly, which I thought
literally
was...
out of nowhere.
Yeah, like, what? What? Okay. Which he hasn't used to battle, like, at all at this point. And it's a baby that starts crying. But then it learns a new move when the balls on its head start glowing. And this is an important move for the Bonsly line, as it's Mimic, which lets it copy Dustox's Whirlwind and sends one of its own back at it, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, this is a fun move that doesn't get a lot of attention. I don't think a lot of Pokemon learn Mimic.
Yeah, it's a pretty rare one.
It is like a signature move for Bonsly and Sudowoodo.
Because it needs it to evolve, much like Mime Jr. And here it uses Mimic again to copy the Psybeam from Dustox. And it's just beating up this Dustox. I'm like, man, this Bonsly is getting levels, given that it's a baby still.
Right.
And then there's a weird little scene here where now Team Rocket's mad, so they start charging at our heroes. But our like Ash, Dawn, and Brock just start running towards Team Rocket as well while holding Pokeballs each. And it's like, what? Why? Just send them out. But this gives a setup to Starly's scene where it dives in front and then goes up into the sky for a really cool evolution sequence where its bandage just falls off, it starts glowing, and it comes out as a Starvia.
Yeah, and this is the first. Is it the first
I'm
evolution
pretty sure,
of the season? I think so.
Oh, of the season? Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think anything else has evolved at this point. Yeah, so you're right. It's the first one at episode 13 of the season.
which is not bad. We're not even to the first gym, so
Yes, that was a note I read that this is the first time we see Ash's bird Pokemon evolve before the first gym.
right.
So it's one of the earliest evolutions for it. And Ash is training for the first gym, and that's why he's teaching Starly Aerial Ace, now Staravia, and it's able to use it effectively against Team Rocket to blast them off.
There is one thing here when Starly evolves. It does the typical anime like cut to every character, like show them all like surprised, but it specifically cuts to Bonsly. And Bonsly has this look in its eyes, like very inspired looking, and that's
Yeah.
gonna come into play here in a sec.
Like surprisingly emotional for a Pokemon that we've barely seen.
Right.
But yeah, it definitely is an interesting thing that you point out to me, which I was like, yeah, this kind of makes these two episodes an arc, surprisingly. Given that I always saw this episode as the Starly episode / Staravia, because that was what we
Because it
really got out
is.
of it. Yeah, because it is, but apparently they tagged in this little detail at the end to set up what comes next. But that's where the episode ends, with them saying bye to Rose Bay, all these bird Pokemon just flying off, and then them chasing after Staravia, which is a really nice little scene of them kind of walking while Staravia soars up in the sky and just enjoys the air for a bit.
Right.
Yeah, any other thoughts on episode 13?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was very I don't even know the word. It's just very scattered, I guess. Like there's just so much happening. We've kind of said that a lot, but there really are just so many things. There's like 3, maybe I guess 4 if you count Team Rocket's different plot lines going on all at once. So there's like a lot of things to juggle. There's a lot of quick cuts, which can make it confusing. It does kind of fit together really well at the end, even though it's very rushed. And then I do like the setup for the next episode, which I didn't notice until I watched it again.
Yeah, it's definitely one that you could watch twice and get more out of it, given how much it has. And while it is scattered, I will probably label it a little more as overambitious, given that they are trying a lot. There's a good amount of attention to detail, surprisingly, for an episode that isn't super relevant to the plot as a whole for the season. So with that in mind, I probably would put it around a 7.
Okay, I was gonna go probably a little lower and say a 5.
Okay.
Personally, and I think that the next one for me was a bit better, but we'll get into that.
Got it. Well, that's good to know. But yeah, those are our thoughts on episode 13 here of the Diamond and Pearl series. So, as we've been teasing now for a little bit, we're going to move on to episode 14, titled Leave It to Brocko. With the blurb reading, on the way to Oreburgh, Ash and his friend see Nurse Joy trying to help an injured Nuzleaf. Nuzleaf is too upset to accept her help, so Brock steps in to calm Nuzleaf down. With help from Bonsly, who Nuzleaf seems to think is a grass-type Pokemon, Badam Ching, Brock wins Nuzleaf's trust and treats its injuries. This Nuzleaf must be lost, since an old tree on the other side of the mountain is the only place in the area where Seedot, Nuzleaf, and Shiftry are found. Ash and his friends volunteer to get Nuzleaf back where it belongs. So again, we have a cold open in this episode where you see Team Rocket being really hungry and pulls out all these raw ingredients for food, but doesn't know what to do with them. And Brock is tied to a tree and tells them, "Hey, I'm a gourmet chef. I can make this a meal for you." And they talk amongst themselves whether they should or not. And it just ends on a shot of the food. And in the corner, you can see a Nuzleaf in a cage, but you can't see anything else. So,
Right.
this is a weird cold open for sure, because immediately I was like, oh, is this an episode where they just capture a bunch of Nuzleaf?
Yeah, you don't really know what led to the situation, and there's kind of a bit of a shock factor of Brock volunteering to help Team
Mm-hmm.
Rocket, and it sort of builds up the intrigue. I like this open better than the other one because it was
Mm,
just a little more cohesive, and you're left wondering, where is this going and how did it happen?
got it. I I like it a little less because we're not like we're in the moment that's already under a lot of layers.
Right.
And maybe if they had a shot in the beginning that just kind of shows both Nuzleaf and Bonsly in this cage, which is what happens, and shows like this is maybe connected, or we're like, oh, why is Bonsly in the cage with Nuzleaf? That would have been a little more interesting to me, to be like, what's happened? What led that to happen? Rather than like Brock is here rather calmly telling Team Rocket that even though I'm tied up, I'll like make this meal for you.
Right.
Because that's the thing that you're trying to, or that you kind of realize because you hear a little bit of Brock's inner monologue, is that, oh, it sounds like he has a plan, so he's going to help Team Rocket.
Hmm.
But you don't really know why, so it's kind of just like they just capture him, but you can barely make out that there's other Pokemon in the scene that have been captured as well.
Right, right. I do like that it immediately sets up that this is a Brock episode,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah, that is
we
true.
we haven't had at all yet. Brock's kind of just been off to the side. He shows up kind of randomly into Sinnoh, like not really part of the plan, and it feels like
Mm-hmm.
he's sort of just tacked on until this point. He doesn't have
Right.
his own goal. He doesn't have, well, he has the goal of becoming like a Pokemon like
Breeder.
breeder, but it's not something that's as obtainable, I don't think, at least in the scope of the show, is not as obtainable as, say, Ash wanting to win the Pokemon League or Dawn wanting to become a contest champion.
Right. There isn't a tangible set of goals or challenges that he needs to overcome necessarily.
Right. And he seems to be, up to this point, just more there for comic relief and just be another character. He doesn't even battle that much.
No, he'll like referee, but other than that, he doesn't really battle, and he sometimes just heals
Mhm.
the Pokemon that they come across or their own with potions and like other natural remedies that he finds. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I will give him credit there that the cold open served a way to show that, oh, this is going to be the main character for this. So get ready. And there's like this sequence, which it's a, I don't think we really need to talk about too much, but Nuzleaf basically ends up on the back of a Vileplume in the middle of the night because it like fell off a tree, and Vileplume freaks out and carries Nuzleaf miles away for some reason, doesn't just shake it off.
Right. And the amount of effort they go to set up these two episodes is
Yeah.
kind of absurd.
It's very like imaginative, I guess. There's some creativity going on here, but it's not super necessary.
No.
And as we are walking along with these Pokemon, again, Dawn mentions, oh yeah, Bonsly picked up Mimic this last episode. So as you know she's mentioning it, you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen here, given if you play the video games and know how Bonsly evolves into its next evolutionary form.
Yeah, they actually don't specifically say in the episode that that's
Mm-hmm.
what causes Bonsly to evolve.
Right. It's never outright addressed.
It's just sort of implied.
Mm-hmm. And this will actually happen later on with another Pokemon. So it's interesting how this is kind of the setup for that as well. But immediately they're interrupted by this wind and leaves just flying out in the distance, where they see a Nurse Joy trying to talk to an injured Nuzleaf, and then Brog is infatuated. Krogan takes him away. So the rest of the gang tries to jump in and see what's going on. Dom pulls out the Pokédex to learn a little bit about this Nuzleaf, and then Brog recovers real quick, which freaks
As
out
usual.
everyone. Yeah. And this time is a little more in control of himself as he explains that he's going to try and help this Nuzleaf by walking over slowly and talking to it calmly as he approaches with his hands behind his back to show that he's not a threat. Which to me, I thought it was a weird tactic because I feel like having open hands that are closer to the ground is a little more reassuring than having your hands behind your back because I don't know what you're holding.
Right. No, I agree there. And I don't know if this is just like a cultural thing. Like that's how people in Japan express that they're not a threat. I don't know how often that comes up, but I think like here in America or just like how I was raised, I've always been told like if you're approaching something, whether it be like a small animal or another person who's like seems threatened, to not do what Brock's doing.
No. It also makes him look taller because when you do that, your spine straightens out more. So a lot of things that are like, if you get hit in the face, Brock, I think you might have misjudged your approach here.
Right. His heart's in the right place.
Yes. That's fair for sure. He comes up to this Nuzleaf, takes a leaf out of a bush, and uses it to do a little human version of Grass Whistle, which I thought was cool.
They mentioned that Nuzleaf very much likes the Grass Whistle.
I think it's a move that it learns, at least through like egg moves. I know that Brock pulls out an Oreburgh and treats it to the Nuzleaf, which I thought was cute.
Yeah, and the Nuzleaf is still wary of Brock. It doesn't take the berry right away. Instead, Brock brings out his bonsai.
Right.
And has the bonsai eat a bit of the berry first to show that it's safe and sort of gain a little more trust. And then that's how bonsai and Nuzleaf are introduced to each other.
Right. It's like, oh, look, this berry didn't poison my bonsai, so you can eat it too.
The classic poison check.
Right. It's the food guards, the food testers.
You're looking up Grass Whistle?
I got interested in this because I feel like there was an episode in Hoenn where you see them using...
It's introduced in Gen 3.
You're right, it was introduced in Gen 3. But I'm doing some real-time research here for on sites on Sinnoh, folks. And it doesn't look like he can, at least in the gen I'm looking at. But hold up.
No, it doesn't look... I'm looking at all gens and it doesn't show...
Weird.
Only Gen 3 it's showing are Trico, Cacnea, and Roselia.
Oh, wow. That's really limited for the debut generation. Okay.
It's a small pool. There are some Gen 2 that learn it, like Sunkern and Chikorita, and then Bulbasaur learns it. But then...
Weird.
It's just those three for Gen 3, and most of them learn it from eggs.
Yes, that's what I do remember. It's very much not a level up move. Given that it's probably a strong move, even though it has low accuracy, it can't put people to sleep. Team Rocket is spying on everything that's happening here, and has this dramatic sequence where they imagine Giovanni, their boss, looking out into the sunset while standing or sitting down in the field, or like doing something while it's playing a grass whistle next to him, but not using the move because, as we just discussed, it can't learn the move.
Yeah, plus points for Meowth for creativity, minus points for the melodrama.
Yeah, this situation that he's crafted is very unviable, I think.
I feel like after all of the boss fantasy flashbacks from Hoenn, Meowth is kind of just grasping at straws and getting desperate at this point.
Like, honestly, Team Rocket should not be interested in this Nuzleaf. Like, maybe if it were a bunch of them, and they were at the tree or something, I would be a little more understanding of how it's like, oh, it's rare for them to find this many at once, so we're gonna go for all of them. But it does feel a little similar to an episode in Hoenn where there's like an injured Nuzleaf and a Shiftry kidnaps Nurse Joy to come help it. Again, like a big old tree forest scenario. So I was like, you guys have already seen and done this. Come on, you can do better.
Yeah, I think because Nuzleaf aren't exactly rare in general, but right before this boss flashback, Nurse Joy does explain that Nuzleaf are very rare in this area.
Right.
And that there's only one tree within like hundreds of miles where Nuzleaf can even be found, which sort of sets up the real problem of the episode, or like the real dilemma that they need to solve. And maybe that's why Team Rocket gets so fixated on this Nuzleaf, because it's rare at the time. But in general, it's not.
Right, because they travel around a lot too, and they probably wouldn't know that it's rare in this area, and B,
well, they would
care?
from listening to, because they were listening in on Nurse Joy.
That's true.
But again, it's still not very valuable. I don't know why they're so fixated on it.
But they immediately put a plan into action, which involves. I thought was kind of cool, actually. They dress up Meowth in a Shiftry costume, paint him all brown to match the color of Shiftry, and then act as field like scouts or something that have been helping the Shiftry.
They say they're backpackers, and then Jessie reiterates that she's a girl.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we're aware.
Yeah, okay. They concoct a tragic backstory in front of our heroes, telling them how they've been looking for this lost Nuzleaf for 50 years, which immediately is a red flag to them, because they're like, what? And then Team Rocket also is like, wait, cut back on the melodrama.
Again, minus points for the melodrama.
Yes. So immediately they just try to gloss over the fact that that's what they said, and have Shiftry's in disguise Meowth, of course, kind of cue that he wants Nuzleaf to come back with him, and they'll take him back to the forest. But Dawn hilariously is like, oh, I haven't seen the Shiftry before. What's this about? And pulls out the Pokédex to give us an entry of the Pokemon she scans, which is the Shiftry. But
yeah, the Shiftry.
Tattles on Meowth and immediately gives an entry for the Scratch Cat Pokemon, which I thought was hilarious.
I think this is one of the better uses of the Pokédex, especially from Dawn. I will say I did a count of how many times the Pokédex is used by Dawn in this episode. It's 4. She uses it 4 times.
Oh, jeez. I thought it was only 2.
It's so many. No, because she used it once on the Nuzleaf, once now on Meowth, and we'll get to 2 more later.
Okay.
And the only reason I bring this up is because on my last episode I wanted to, but we were just so enthralled by Paul and Ash's fight that we didn't mention this. And that Dawn has terrible timing with this Pokédex.
Yes.
Like she breaks up the flow of the episode so much. And in that episode, she does it while they're about to get attacked by this Ursaring.
Right.
She just straight up interrupts the Ursaring's attack and is like, hold on, let me scan this. This seems like a great idea. And it does the same. I think this is the one good use of it in the episode, but she overdoes it.
I like that I always like when they use the Pokédex, but 4 is a lot for one episode.
4 is so many.
In this moment is when apparently Team Rocket is smart enough to strike and use a net to catch the Nuzleaf and Brock's Bonsly. So Ash immediately brings out Starvia, which has been super effective in the last few episodes in catching Team Rocket as they flee in their balloon. But Jessie apparently has finally caught on and sends out Viper to blind Starvia with haze and keep it from catching up, which I was like, oh, all right. points to that. But what the Team Rocket gang doesn't know is that Brock, or they do know actually, that Brock was able to hang on to the net from the outside and is now tagging along with them. So this leads to the cold open where they have both Bonsai and Nuzleaf in a cage, and then Brock tied to a tree in like 10 ropes or something.
There is something I wanted to ask you about this Team Rocket net balloon thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice? I teased this in our chat. Did you notice the music?
No, I thought you were talking about the music later on, actually.
No, it's this scene was the one I was talking about.
Okay.
The music here is the battle music for Kyogre and Groudon.
What?
Yeah, it's technically the one they use in Lucario and the Mystery Mew and in Jirachi Wishmaker, but it's that same battle theme.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very intense for Brock grabbing onto a hot air balloon.
That explains it. Yeah, because I saw that there was music from those two movies in here. I just didn't realize it was from the Kyogre and Groudon battle scene, which puts it on a whole other level.
It's so intense for just what is, a between city filler episode, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's even a more intense moment later on where it's a little more fitting, but still kind of like, wait, why? Why? What?
You didn't need to go this hard, Pokemon.
Yeah. But Brock goes a little hard with a plan here, as Team Rocket is very audibly complaining about not having food. So he volunteers to cook for them using these ingredients that he has. Where did they say they get these from? There's like nuts, bread, and some vegetables.
Oh yeah, where did they get them?
I'm pretty sure they stole them from somewhere, but I can't remember where. Brock manages to make this feast for them, which distracts them enough so that he can go over to the cage and run off into the forest holding the cage containing Nuzleaf and Bonsly, which looks hilarious because you think that thing would weigh a ton, but he's able to carry it in like one arm as he runs off super quickly.
I mean, I guess Brock's older than the other two. Like, he's got a little more strength to him.
Apparently.
Man,
it's just that
cartoon
the cage
physics.
seems... Right, the cage just seems to change size a bit, where in one, it looks like it takes him a lot of effort to or like proportionate to Brock, it looks like it would take a lot of effort to lift, but then as he runs off with it, it's not an issue at all. But once he's a safe distance away, he instructs Bonsly to use Double Edge to try to break a bar of the cage down. It partially works, but Bonsly is still kind of hurt from using that attack and doesn't want to keep going, but Brock encourages it enough to do it one more time, and that breaks through the cage successfully. Bonsly is celebrating, and that's when we see our next evolution in the middle of this episode.
Yeah, we got back-to-back evolution episodes. Very fun.
Yeah, the last one was a new Pokemon, first one that we saw caught this season, which is Starly, and now we have one that Hoenn actually, or I guess Battle Frontiers to be specific, introduced. So Brock is evolving now a Pokemon from a past region, which I don't think has happened before, where Brock brings a Pokemon from a past season and it evolves in the new region.
Right.
There is one, actually. And that was...
Oh, is there?
Yes, Golbat.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that was just kind of because the next season for them was Johto, where Crobat was introduced. And here we're kind of doing the opposite, where like we teased that Sinnoh coming up with Bonsly, and now we're evolving it into its evolution of Sudowoodo, which is from Johto as well.
I think it's a fun way to introduce those like new pre-evolution / baby Pokemon that get introduced every once in a while into the games. Like, it's hard to write those in, I think, into the story naturally, unless it's a situation like this. Like, sure, Sudowoodo is nothing new for the viewers, but it is exciting to see Bonsly evolve.
Right. Yeah, it's cute. I wish we'd see a little more screen time with Bonsly, but
Mhm.
it is nice to give Brock a more robust rock type Pokemon, which he hasn't had for a
Right.
while actually. Because in Hoenn, he didn't really have any rock type Pokemon. He had
What did he
Ludicolo,
have? Oh yeah.
Mudkip, and the fortress that he had brought over from Johto.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's kind of it, which is like a weird team, but it's cool, but very weird. I thought they might give
Right.
him like a nose pass or something, but never seemed to happen. So Team Rocket also finally finds out that everyone's gone, so they start looking for Brock and crew, who has run off clearly with the Pokemon. Um, And then they get to a river, which Sudowoodo is hesitant to cross, being a rock type Pokemon, that even though disguises itself as a tree, is afraid of water. So while Nuzleaf has now been riding on Sudowoodo's head, Brock Brock returns Sudowoodo to its Pokeball, leaving Nuzleaf literally hanging midair.
Best way to put that, honestly.
Right, I'm like, oh come on, you know how sensitive this Nuzleaf is, but you decide to take the air right out from under it and make it just fall down, and now start crying because it sees that Sudowoodo is gone. Um,
This is a tricky situation for Brock
mhm.
because his own Pokemon is terrified of the water, and he makes that very clear. And I mean, Brock even asked him if he'd want to return to the Pokeball, and Sudowoodo sort of just like nods at him.
Yeah.
But Nuzleaf, on the other hand, can't really cope right now without Sudowoodo.
Mhm.
So it puts Brock in a difficult situation because
Yes.
he does try to make all of the Pokemon he encounters comfortable.
Between a rock and a wet place, you might say.
Ah, man, I really set you up for that, didn't I?
Oh yes, you did. And then Team Rocket makes the situation even tougher as they show up, spotting Brock trying to cross the river as they like go over some stepping stones. And they're not even all the way across when Team Rocket is able to really quickly land their balloon on the other side of the river, which I thought was funny. And this leads to Brock trying to grab Nuzleaf and go away and like keep going while Sudowoodo is still stuck trying to cross the river. So
Mm-hmm.
now Team Rocket's caught up. He's trying to defend Nuzleaf, but Sudowoodo can't really do much as it's afraid to try to make the last leap over. So now it's down to Brock and his only other Pokemon, which is Krogunk. And Krogunk takes on the Viper. Seems to be completely unfazed by Viper's bite and uses Poison Jab on it like a badass.
And then later, the wrap that Seviper puts it in. I mean, I wrote down that Krogunk is completely oblivious to this.
Yes.
Just does not care.
And
it sort of like doesn't even react.
yeah, he's just there calmly taking it. Not like he's just crouching the entire time. So Krogan's completely unfazed for a good portion of this and just starts whacking away at Viper's head with Brick Break and then down its body to just make it more and more unbearable. All while still immobilized by Rap, which I thought was just a cool show of Kurogung's willpower.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not
and
enough.
You're right. They both fall.
Yes, you see Viper get knocked out, but at the same time, Kurogung's still in the same position it's been the whole time. Is also knocked out, which looks hilarious.
There is one thing that happens in this battle, and that's that Krogunk misses a poison sting.
Yes.
And it blows up the rocket balloon.
Right, which I was like, oh, okay.
Like it seems kind of useless. Like it doesn't seem to matter much, but it does cut to Ash and Dawn who are able to locate Brock at that time.
Right.
Because an explosion obviously means Team Rocket is nearby.
Yes.
If Ash has learned anything in his 10 years as a 10-year-old, it's that explosions mean that Rocket is nearby.
Yes, it gives them an idea of where to go and find Team Rocket. Though I feel like Starvia should have seen the balloon a while ago, so I don't know what happened there. But then Brock is forced to put Krogan back in the ball, given that it's knocked out. But Team Rocket still has Pokemon, so we see James throughout the Carnivine to hit Nuzleaf and Brock with Bullet Seed, and Sudowoodo's still freaking out on the rock, trying to decide what to do, and is then convinced itself to make the leap of faith onto dry land, which it doesn't make, actually.
Yeah, it gets its foot pretty wet there.
Yeah. But it makes it across mostly unfazed, so I guess the phobia of water isn't real, is what I get from that. Like, it's not weak to it.
It's just strong enough to, it's just strong enough to survive.
Got it, okay.
You see this a lot, or I've noticed it a lot in later seasons and in later series where certain Pokemon with like weak typing get really, really upset when they have to deal with the typing they're weak to.
Okay.
It's just something that's shown a lot, and they do it in Kalos to show Dragon's weakness to Fairy because Fairy's the new type.
And by this point, Ash and Dawn have caught up to Brock and want to help, but Brock's like, no, this is our moment. You chill. You've been battling the last, 13 episodes, but right now, we can't do this. And then Carnivine goes in for a bite, which is countered by Sudowoodo's flail. And I thought that was a cool little moment as a way of showing, it's a move that's more powerful if the user has taken more damage. And at this point, it looks like it's powerful enough to knock the Carnivine off it. So now it's down to a Cacnea and a Dustox against Brock Sudowoodo. So when this starts to look unfair, Ash wants to step in, but immediately there's a whirl of wind going around, and out of nowhere pops out a Shiftry, which is the Shiftry from the beginning of the episode that was looking for this Nuzleaf.
Right. So it has shown up before. It's not completely out of nowhere, but it is still a bit surprising that this is what breaks up the battle so quickly.
Yeah, he just shows up after looking for Nuzleaf, has apparently caught onto where they are, and this is now, if I'm not mistaken, the 4th time that Dawn pulls out the Pokédex.
Yep, you beat me to it. She stops right after Shiftry lands and checks her Pokédex.
Yeah, apparently while everyone's stunned and apparently when everyone's stunned and Shiftry starts looking around, and she's like, "All right, I gotta get this one too. It's 4 for 1 deal today."
It's like the Team Rocket motto where they just break the flow of everything and everyone else is just okay with it.
Yeah, Dawn's already oblivious. She's, what's it called?
She's already over it.
Yeah, she's over it basically. But
also, but I'm getting that way listening to Dawn check her Pokédex.
That's true. Yeah,
this episode.
You're just replacing it, Dawn. Come on. So Meowth tries to spread some propaganda that our heroes are the ones who took Nuzleaf because they have Nuzleaf on their side. So it just looks like that's what they're up to. But this is where you get the fastest that I think Team Rocket has ever gotten the balloon together. Because while Meowth shouts this at Shiftry, they sneak off. And literally 2 seconds later, as we see Shiftry approaching Nuzleaf and our heroes, a mechanical arm swings from behind Shiftry, grabs the Nuzleaf, and shows that they're in a fully built Wobbuffet balloon. In those 2 seconds, they made this balloon!
Was it like built in as a backup, or where did this come
It was,
from? Have we seen this before?
yeah, maybe. I do want to say we've seen other balloons that they use that don't have Meowth's head, but it is very specifically shaped in a weird way where it's a full Wobbuffet body that looks weird.
Okay, I do see alternate balloons here. I had to look this up because I just needed
Yeah, at
to
one
know.
point they want to replace Meowth with Sneasel, so they get a Sneasel balloon. Yeah.
Yeah, it says the most common alternate balloon design is Wobbuffet theme, named the
Oh,
Wobballoon,
there you go.
which first appears in the Wayward Wobbuffet. I'm assuming that's when Wobbuffet gets introduced.
Maybe. Mm,
I think so.
it might be more. It might not be when Wobbuffet gets introduced, but it might be the one where they put a key to a safe where Pikachu's
Oh
in.
yeah,
Yeah, and he's
yes.
stuck on a wild, hilarious adventure as everyone tries to get the Wobbuffet back. This is another appearance of that balloon, and Team Rocket
Ooh.
successfully has Nuzleaf in their grasp. So Shiftry steps in and tries to take them down with a Razor Wind, I think. And the first two bounce off, but the third one does manage to pierce the balloon, causing Team Rocket start to fall and Nuzleaf to fall out of the balloon carriage. So Shiftry uses a gust of wind to soften the fall for Nuzleaf. All while, again, we have some extremely dramatic music playing.
Which one was
I
this?
think
I
this
did
was
not catch
Mystery of
it.
Mew again.
Was it
I don't know what the...
like it wasn't the Groudon Kyogre again, was it?
I don't... no. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just extremely dramatic as Shiftry uses the wind to save Nuzleaf's life effectively, because as we established in the Poketch episode, falling does cause damage to Pokemon. So
Right.
here it stops the fall, and then wait, I'm trying to remember what happens here. So it stops Nuzleaf from hitting the ground like straight on, and then Team Rocket's falling, so the way is clear for Pikachu to hit him with Thunderbolt and then blast him off formally because their balloon's already blown up twice. It's time for you to get going, Team Rocket.
Right, and it's time for this episode to end.
Finally. It was an eventful one, very Brock focused for the most part.
Yeah, I liked it. I like to see Brock get his own time
also
to shine, I
to have
guess.
one of Brock's Pokemon really develop, because we also haven't seen that in a long time. Like seeing Bonsly battle and evolve, and also take on different challenges at multiple levels, all to reunite his new friend Nuzleaf, was all really cool to see.
Right, and also just because the focus is so much on Ash and Dawn all the time, it's also so much on their own Pokemon. Like we've gotten multiple Piplup episodes already. We've gotten 2 Turtwig episodes. We've gotten Dawn's first contest. We're about to get Ash's first gym battle. And Brock's kind of just been there.
Got in the Krogunk, and that's kind of it.
And not even that, but his Pokemon have just kind of been there. Like the most Bonsly did before this episode was the 20 seconds before this episode where it learns Mimic.
It's been crying for most of the time. Using fake tears and maybe real tears, unclear. But it ends with a cool shot of what looks like Mount Cornet out in the distance. And that is maybe a reference to what happens in the games where you go through Mount Cornet for the first time to get to Oreburgh City for the first gym battle, which is what's going to happen in the next episode. So if you want to stick around for that, you can check out episode 9 of Sights on Sinnoh. Trying to remember where we are here. But yeah, that episode is going to cover Ash as he enters Oreburgh City, and we actually have a full 4-episode arc in this city. So a lot to talk about. I'm still figuring out how the best way to approach this is, but definitely a lot happens here, which I think is cool. That's not just like a one-off episode. when we get to gym battles, given everything that we've seen so far.
I do want to say that I really enjoyed that this 2-episode segment was all there was between Jubilife and Oreburgh.
Right, because it already took forever to get from Sandgem to Jubilife that I'm like, oh man, it like geographically, that's one route. And
right, and it shouldn't be that far, but the anime has a habit of drawing out the time between routes so long. And I know I reference Kalos a lot because it's the most recent series I've seen, but there is like a almost 20 episode arc where they're never in a city.
Jeez.
And it's so draining. Like a lot happens and like the plot moves forward, but it's incredibly draining to just have them in the wilderness be like going through character of the day and like Pokemon of the day episodes like on repeat without feeling like they're making progress.
Yeah.
So it's nice that they cut this into like a really quick bite-sized chunk where 2 evolutions happen. We get some focus on some fun Pokemon. We get to see Brock in an episode on his own. Like I think this is just a solid set of 2 episodes together. I'm not a massive fan of either. I enjoyed both. I'm not a massive fan of either of them standalone, but I think together as this like mini arc between cities, it works.
Right. It's nice that there's some continuity in here that's immediately paid off between the two. Again, that it's only 2 episodes, given that we just finished a contest and now we're headed towards the beginning finally of Ash's first gym battle challenge in the Sinnoh region. And 2 evolutions is also really nice to see. In arguably Pokemon that kind of aren't in the spotlight for most of the season going forward, that we get their time to shine now, and we're like, okay, now we can move on to the big plot. It really does kind of feel like the ending of the first chapter, or maybe even the 0 chapter of this season.
I agree, and I do want to add that I like that it was Brock that got the evolution, because we go into this gym battle not feeling like Ash is overpowered. Like he has a Starvia, yes, but if they did a second evolution that was a different Pokemon, it would likely be his Turtwig, which we also just got and sets it up for a harder time. So I'm glad that they went with something new, I guess, or something that maybe wasn't expected at the time of the episode. And then also just makes it feel like it's still an even playing field moving forward, especially since we know Rourke's typing.
Yeah,
we know Staravia's typing.
It is interesting that Starvia almost seems like the most trained out of Ash's Pokemon at the moment, given that he focused on giving it Aerial Ace and it's evolved. But we haven't really seen much in the way of Apom, Turtwig, and Pikachu necessarily like learning new moves or techniques in these few episodes. So I feel like that's going to set up some of the events that happens in the Oreburgh City arc. But before we get there, of course, I'd like to hear your rating on episode 14 of Diamond and Pearl, again titled Leave It to Brocko.
I'm going to give this one a 6. Again, I don't dislike either of the episodes we discussed today. I think they're both fine. I'm not the biggest fan of them. Trying to think of my actual complaints with this one. The pacing is broken up a lot by Dawn. I don't think that's enough to, ruin the episode, obviously. I did enjoy that it was a Brock focus episode. Was a bit annoyed at how quickly they wrapped it up with Shiftry just showing up, and then suddenly they're across the mountain with Shiftry in the tree. But I don't think that's a huge deal. I don't think it really stood out as an episode. Like it again,
Mhm.
it was fine. I enjoyed it. I just don't think it was anything exceptional. I did think it was fun, and I enjoyed seeing Brock and Sudowoodo get some time. I think
Right.
together, I know I didn't rate either of the episodes super high, but
Mhm.
going back and seeing them as a single unit, which is how they were released, I would actually rate them higher as a combined 7, which I know seems
Okay.
kind of counterintuitive, but I think they work well together.
Yeah, that's true. And with the context that they were released together, it does make it a little more understandable in how they're introduced and executed. But I will say that the setup for this episode does feel a little too elaborate for the payoff. And
Agreed.
while it was refreshing to see Brock take the spotlight and have some of his Pokemon featured, I I think it could have been done a little better and a little more organically.
Yeah, I agree with you
Rather
there.
than have a lot of the conflict to just kind of rely on Team Rocket. So I would give it a 6 out of 10.
That's fair. I do think that it is a bit exhausting that it was 2 very heavy Team Rocket episodes. You know, at this point, it's too early to introduce the other major threat to the series.
Yeah,
So I
I
guess we'll
don't
let it
think they
be.
are introduced for a while. Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to.
Because I can't remember the first time you meet them. I think it's not for a while longer. So we
I
still have
don't know in
time.
the
But
show. In the games, it's when they
the
return.
games.
It's when the player
Yeah.
returns to Jubilife. You meet them briefly,
Right.
but after that, Valley Windworks is the classic starting point of the of the Galactic storyline.
But yeah, that is pretty much it for us today. That was again episode 14 and episode 13 of the Diamond and Pearl anime. And it sets us up for a long journey in Oreburgh City. So stick around for that. And I'd like to thank JM for joining us today. It's been awesome having you as always.
Thanks again for having me, Will. It's been fun. I do
Yeah.
enjoy this series, and I like talking about Pokemon with someone.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught the music in here because I wasn't sure what tracks they were, but I was also like, wow, these are really dramatic. And when I saw they're pulled from a movie, it started to all click.
It's hard to find that information, honestly. I
Yeah.
don't know what the second one was. I do know the first one um was the Ruby Sapphire Emerald legendary music because currently that theme is being used in Pokemon Masters
Oh,
for the Groudon Kyogre event. So
that's funny.
I've been hearing it a lot.
That makes more sense. Okay, cool. And if you want to watch some of these episodes with us, you can also go to Pokemon.com and click on Pokemon TV to catch them all there for as long as they're up, which we don't know how long it's going to be. Usually they rotate on like a somewhat weekly or monthly basis, so just keep an eye on that. But that's where you can watch them. That's where we watch them. And yeah, just catch them while they're there and let us know in the comments below what your thoughts were on these episodes and if you're enjoying anything so far from the show that you want us to keep going with. But yeah, it's been great having you again, and thank you to everyone who listened.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time with another episode of Sights on Sinnoh. So until then, have a good one.